All right, a little brief tour of the garden. We'll start on the southeast corner of the house, in the backyard, and look at some multiflora rose and some Japanese honeysuckle and some bush honeysuckle, plenty of bush honeysuckle. This area was intended to be rewilded, and there's quite a few native plants growing here. This grass is native, and unfortunately, I don't know what it is. It might be bottlebrush grass, but it is a really beautiful thing in the winter. It's all brown and wispy, and it looks beautiful out here. There's also this horrible stuff everywhere. Well, there's poison ivy, and that horrible stuff, which is, I think it's vinca or euonymus or something, I'm not sure, but it's terrible. It's taken over everything. And so this area, now that I have plenty of time and I'm not working 900 hours a week on other things, I'll remove all these invasive species and we'll get back to something that's a little bit more natural. This is a wildflower. You know, I don't know the name of this one either, unfortunately. I have looked it up before and I just simply don't remember, but it's a beautiful little thing. The flowers are much showier when it's in full bloom. I'm not sure what that purple flower is, but we'll take a look at it. It's kind of a pretty thing, and I don't know if it's native or not. It just comes up every year. These are the rocks from where this stone wall over here fell down. And about 20 years ago-ish, I decided I would reconstruct the wall, and I built this one section. And then I got busy doing other things. This is dry stone construction from the Irish School of Dry Stone Construction. And I'm going to clean up all these poisonous and invasive plants off of here. But there's a little Virginia creeper. That's nice. But this has stood for 20 years and it hasn't moved. So if I ever get back to this, I can go on down the row here and fill all that in. Here's a bunch more rock, a pretty giant pile from when the rock wall fell down. I think it was about 1984, 85 when that fell. And it's just been sitting here. So most of these trees and things are staying. Nice big walnut tree there. Is it? Yeah. And that one is maybe a linden, maybe a basswood. And then this is a boxwood here. Poison ivy tree. Just kidding. It's just a boxwood. This is we've got this fenced off so that the little dog doesn't get out. Maisie really didn't ever get out this way, but there's our neighbor's yard. And again, stone wall's missing, so I'm gonna have to be rebuilding that. And it's a big piece of plywood that we just set back here and kind of sheet mulch this a little bit, so we sort of have a starting place to clear some of this crap out of here. That's a pokeberry coming up. And then over here, we have a pretty nice little forest of Aurelia spinosa. I'm gonna go over here and see them up close. They get pretty big. There's a grapevine in it. This right here is Aurelia spinosa. They get pretty big, pretty tall, usually about 15, 18 foot tall, and then the lilac borers eat them and kill them. Then they come up again from the roots. So mostly it's a lot of little ones, but occasionally we get a big one. And making my way through the grapevines here. I hadn't really planned on coming this way, but I think I can get through. Again, Aurelia spinosa, don't grab that for support. Okay. All right. I seem to be stuck in the grapevines. There we go. All right, so here, I'll just make my way back this way. I'll go under. Because there is a really neat thing here. This tree coming up, arching out like this. This is a American hazelnut tree. It's never had a hazelnut on it because they require additional trees for pollination, even though I forget the word for it. They have both sexual parts, male and female flowers. They need another tree for pollination, and I don't have one, so I don't get nuts. All right, this massive thing here is Aronia melanocarpa. I'm gonna say it's 18 foot tall and at least as wide a spread. It's the biggest one I've ever seen. It started its life here as a tiny little bush, and it's just grown to be this massive giant. And it is beautiful when it blooms. In fact, it's about to bloom. I think there's some, it has bloomed. It's bloomed, and we're making berries now, so that's good. Birds didn't care much for this when it was first here, and then they got a little bit more, robins particularly like it. That's daffodils, yellow. They're really pretty when they bloom. And then here's Maisie. The terrace here is kind of falling apart. It's going to come out this year, and we're just going to get rid of it. It's just going to be gone. This is the back of the house here, and vines. These are the vines are all Boston ivy from Asia, and this is Virginia creeper. It grows too fast to really be on a house because I have to clean it off so often from the roof line. But anyway, this is a nice little bed here that I've worked on quite a bit. It's part weird stuff and part natives. There's a peony over here in the corner about to bloom for this first time it's going to bloom, and then the hosta, and then there's a whole bunch of these things in the Jack in the Pulpit family, as you can see one back there, that are actually I think from Japan, fortunately, and there's some Asiatic lilies, but this stuff is all heath aster, which is just gorgeous. Tons of white flowers covered in wasps in the fall, and of course little violets for the border. But I think this is a pretty little bed. It is kind of wild. And there's also some garden phlox right there in the center. You can probably see. I got mint. That is a baby from that giant evening primrose that we had a few years ago that was taller than, it was like 11 foot tall. And we let it go to seed, and we still have babies. This one's growing in a pot. These guys here are elderberry bushes that have been cut and sprouted in water, and I don't have anywhere to put them, and there's not really a native plant society or anything locally, so I don't really know what I'm going to do with them. They're rooted, they're ready to go on the ground. I've got probably 200 or 300 of them, but I've got nowhere to really put them. This is my greenhouse. It's not very big, it's just a little one. Got a heater in here because we've had the second coldest May on record. But we've got trays and trays of things. There's my basil. This is a neat little variety. It's kind of pretty. I'm not sure what it is exactly. I bought it in a mix. And then of course tomatoes. And then I'll do the upper level first. Then there's that's African marigolds. And I got peppers back here, and eggplant, corn, tomatillo, rosemary, French beans, can't remember what that is, okra maybe, leeks, more peppers, hot peppers of every description, celery and celeriac. That's In the back there is purple coneflower. And then a bunch more tomatoes coming along nicely. Those 3 flats back in the corner there are Greek oregano, Italian oregano, and broadleaf thyme. And then down here I've got about 100 marigolds. Those are all cowpeas. And then I got more hot peppers and some upland cress, a few other little things. This first thing here was just a mix of stuff. Melons and sunflowers and I think soybeans actually. This here is a eggplant that's been alive for a couple of years. I just lived in this pot. These are 3 peppers that I overwintered, 4 peppers that I overwintered. Most of them are blooming now. I got to keep them in the greenhouse because it is, as I said, a very cold May. But we'll head on over here. This is a shed here on the back of the apartment. You might be able to see a little bit of the texture on the new roof. It's nice. And just cleaned the shed out. It's still completely full of stuff. Typical garden shed. But I'm thinking about I was originally going to, because of this, you see this greenhouse panels, I was going to turn this whole thing here into a greenhouse, but then I really didn't want to because it's on a slab, but I have these greenhouse doors on it, which isn't kind of nice. You get some light in here. Although I don't know what good it does. You're never in here with the doors closed because you couldn't get out if you were, so that would be terrible. Be trapped in here forever. This is my grandfather's old license plate. All right. So I think it's a good place to store root crops and things like that over the winter, maybe because it's close to the house and just a little warmer than the ambient temperature. This border is all, there's really nothing native in it, unfortunately. Yes, there is. Well, there's native weeds. There's Virginia creeper, and there's a ton of strawberry, wild strawberry, real wild strawberry, not the Indian one that people, that I thought was native strawberry when I was a kid. This is actually Virginiana or Virginica. I don't remember the species name, but it is the native strawberry. But this is mostly just full of daffodils and tulips and hyacinths and things like that. There's a rose bush, not a native one. Well, probably originally derived from a native one, but. And then down here is a hydrangea, but it's a cultivar. It's supposed to be about 6 times this big by now, but it had a couple of rough years. I think it's finally got its legs under it, and it's going to do good now. And then there's all this horrible stuff growing on the wall, which is coming off this year. That's the same stuff that's taken over every damn thing. This is euonymus for sure, this stuff, and that has to go. And that stuff, whatever that is, vinca or winter creeper or whatever, I don't know, but it's horrible. It's taken over all of Muscatatuck Park too and killed most of the wildflowers that live there. It's really hard to keep under control, but this is the year. This is some of my workspace. These are extra plants that are basically going to go in the compost at some point. Here's some little, this is a butterfly milkweed coming up. I had a few of them survive the winter, about 6 of them. I had some sage that survived the winter. The rest of this is all probably just going to go in the compost. So, anyhow, move along. It's the old gate. I was told this came from the Carpenter Building in Indianapolis. United Brotherhood of Carpenters headquarters. It was a part of the elevator. Can't say the word elevator. Gate. But there it is. I fixed the latch this year. It was a mess. This is just Hare Lane, looking down Hare Lane, and some eastern cedar and there's a whole bunch of blue-eyed grass that blooms back in here. This is the area that my grandmother transplanted a bunch of butterfly milkweed in sometime in the, early 70s, and then Ben Baker came out and killed it all because he said it was a weed. And then it ended up getting replaced with these daylilies, which are not really that beneficial. But there they are, instead of the butterfly milkweed that could have been growing here for 50 years. This is what's left of the compost that I bought. It filled pretty much the entire driveway, and there's just one little lump left, but I haven't anywhere to put it, so there it sits. There's the apartment, or garage, or whatever, where Tiffany and I lived, and I think we drank some scotch here, and we had some lasagna and various things when you visited. This is a giant, massive yellow honeysuckle. This is not native to Jennings County, but it's native to Kentucky. And the yellow, of course, is a cultivar. This is we'll get to this in a second. I'll do Tiffany's bed next. See if I can not make a shadow on it. This area is an area that Tiffany took over and landscapes and works on and puts things in. It's mostly black-eyed Susans, which you can see coming up here in profusion. There's a bunch of heath aster in here too, because we both love heath aster, and a bunch of violets, because who doesn't love little blue violets? And then she's got some things like some daylilies and some garden phlox, some things like that. It's a nice little bed, some sedum. And then here we are at the back door by the kitchen, and this area we're about to look at now was the original kitchen garden. And it goes, well, I'll just kind of stand over here where we can just kind of take it all in. And board is part of the original wooden sides from that have now been taken off. But that's the kitchen garden. We'll just take it one crop at a time here. This is its third season, so it's very nicely established. We're starting to get some good fertility. And I use no pesticides, herbicides, fungicides, or any kind of fertilizer at all. We're just trying to improve the soil so that it will grow in crops intensively. And here we've succeeded. We've got some beautiful cabbage and some cauliflower that's coming along just really nicely. And then this I'm super proud of. This is my herb garden. And we've got some radish kind of filling in around the edges, but this is sage about to bloom here. Gorgeous tarragon, chives, and then this is common thyme, a big swath of it. But it just makes just the loveliest picture when you walk out of the back door, kitchen door there, and you see this, and you come out and pick your herbs. There's a dogbane or a American Indian hemp growing up in the middle of this I've got it everywhere. I will probably remove this one, but it is there for now. This is the new portion of the herb garden with purple coneflower, Greek oregano, Italian oregano, and broadleaf English thyme, which is a little different than the other thyme I've got. And then there's a few spinach plants left over from some overwintered spinach, which we're just finishing up. Looks like it's getting ready to rise up and bloom, so it'll come out soon. Then in this bed, we've got onions, deer prints, deer hooves. There's a mole went through. We like the moles because they provide free fertilizer and kind of loosen everything up a bit and eat the grubs. So they very seldom do any actual damage to the garden, but they do. It does look messy when they come through. But these are various different types of bulbing onions, and then we've got a whole bunch of head lettuce, which we're growing into heads instead of picking the leaves, which is what we usually do. We wanted some head lettuce this year. We've got bunching onions, and then over there in the corner some bronze fennel and some calendula, and more chives. Then a little spinach patch that was planted out this spring. A bed of radishes that's just finishing up, and then broadleaf sorrel, which is getting ready to bloom, and one poor asparagus coming up in the middle of it. We never pick it because it doesn't seem like enough to eat. The deer adore the broadleaf sorrel, and they're always over here chomping it. Let's go take a look, because it's kind of wild how much of it is just chomped off back here. Deer love it. So if the deer eat this, that's fine. I've got plenty of broadleaf sorrel. That's a perennial. Come back for many, many years, and the deer can eat on that and leave my other things alone. This was a bed I was trying to grow wildflowers in, and I decided to take it out because it got overrun with poison ivy and weeds, and it just wasn't working. I've got some other places I can put the flowers I had, but these are the peonies that came off of somebody's grave somewhere. Everyone's dead that would remember where they came from, but they come up year after year along with the bed straw. And this is, I'll get out here on the lane and we'll take a look down the lane, because this is my wild edge. And it kind of just blocks the garden and the front lawn, or front yard area from the road. Also provides lots of habitat for various things. We've got some of these things have to come out. There's a bunch of the Bradford pears that are wild offsprings that need to come out. Like that giant thing there coming up in a column, that's a Bradford pear. And I'm gonna cut it down probably this summer. Make a nice post. It's very big and tall. This is a tulip tree though. It's beautiful, and it's staying. This stuff is all dogwood of some description. Not pagoda or red twig or flowering, I think maybe gray dogwood, but it's thick. It's thick in here. And it's beautiful. It's about to bloom. Really nice. This is a little area that I'm really coming along with nicely. This is an area that I am rewilding that is actually doing pretty well. There is a little bit of Japanese honeysuckle in here. There's a tiny bit of Canada thistle. I've been removing it before it blooms every year, and the roots are just about exhausted, so that's about done. Well, this is full of foxtail and bee balm, which is native a little bit south of here, so we're stretching a bit to say it's native, but we also have this little twig here is wild senna marlandica, I think, and it'll come up from seed. It's an annual, actually, in the pea family, and so it comes up in here. And then we've also got, I think there's some milkweed. There's a couple of deer paths through here. We see them better from the other side. The deer just come through this neighborhood in giant herds. But this is mountain mint here. There's the blooms from last year. It's beautiful, nice and thick. When it blooms, there'll be so many native bees and wasps here that it'll be like you can hear the buzzing from 10 feet away. Oh, there's one. There's a common milkweed coming up in here. There's quite a few. There's another one. Quite a few common milkweed, and I think they will probably fill in quite a bit more as years go by, and I'll have quite a stand here. But this area is about, I don't know what, 18 by 12 feet. And then there's a nice little cherry tree, which kind of marks the edge of it, and then a whole bunch of stuff I need to cut down. So, moving on to what we got here. Yeah, apple tree. Apple tree's about done. I planted this when I was maybe 10 or 11 years old, and it's about dead. There's the O'Mara's house. But yeah, this is about gone. It's got a little bit of life left in it, but it's also got big rotting dead sections, and there's a piece I cut off. Here's my compost pile. That's registering, oh, nice, 140. So we've got a nice mix of greens and browns, and it's not very full. This thing's about waist high on me, and I'm trying to get it up to the top, but it goes down pretty quick. We don't have enough stuff to really put in it. This This is the new section of the garden this year here, with just put some new cardboard on the paths, so it looks nice and clean right now. But there's a real interesting thing going on here. This is the compost that I bought in, and the plants are looking kind of sad. This is compost that I made here. This compost that I made is rich and crumbly and full of things that are broken down and things that aren't. Eggshells, but it's just soft and fluffy, and it smells like a forest floor. And you can see this is my little annual herb garden with caraway, and it's actually a biennial, and I'll let it grow again next year and make seeds. But we've got cilantro and dill in here, and a few shallots growing. It is just growing up a storm. And then here's the purchased in compost, which is kind of mud-like, and it does break up. Some of the lumps, though, get so hard you can't break them up. We've had a lot of rain recently, so it's a little easier, but if they dry out at all, they turn into little concrete lumps. And that's supposed to be about 5 times that size at this point. I don't know whether we've got, whether it's just because it's such fine tilth and it's turned into mud, or whether it's devoid of life, or whether it's full of herbicides, clopyralid or aminopyralid 2,4-D. I'm not sure. I grew some peas in it to make sure, and they seem to grow okay, but then they get this sort of pauperate condition of all the plants. You can see these fennel, bulb fennel should be bigger. This kale is miniature, hardly growing. This kohlrabi here is just looking pretty sad, and the mustard is, I mean, that is truly pauperate, because that mustard would grow as tall as me and then bloom. And I mean, look at this is my mustard plant. So something is going on here. I think it will heal and eventually grow crops, but this is what we're doing for now. This parsley should be bigger. And here's an interesting thing, though, where we've got one dill, which is just taken off next to these other dill that aren't doing so well, and I'm not sure. I really don't know why, but it is interesting. It can grow. It smells good. It can grow crops. But then, you know, right behind here is turnips in my compost, and peas for shoots, lettuce, onions. I was looking over here at the calendula and said lettuce when I was actually photographing onions. But collards there, and Brussels sprouts and broccoli. So there's the garage or the apartment, and then here's the house. New gutters, new roof. And then this is peas. They're bought in. Here's 2 new beds that don't have anything in them yet. That's going to be tomatoes and tomatillos and cilantro and hot peppers, and I'm hoping that they grow all right. We'll see. These peas, some of the peas are starting to take off. They sat here for a long time. I don't know if they're just getting established now, but a few of them are looking really sad. And then we have some that are almost normal. Not quite, but almost. I don't think that's really like leaf curl there in the new growth, like you would see with aminopyralid. I'm not really thinking that's what that is. It could be, but it's not very pronounced if it is. It's maybe 1 or 2 parts per billion, and that might be enough to slow the growth down here. But yeah, some of them are taking off and some of them are not. But we'll see. We'll see what happens. This lettuce should have been picked twice by now, and it is. These plants are just tiny. So again, two 30-foot long or ish by 4-foot beds of lettuce that we can't pick because they're all just tiny. Yeah. Oh, there's some St. John's wort that was part of the original border up here, and I've got St. John's wort everywhere now. This stuff just spews seeds, and it's beautiful, and I just let it grow wherever it wants to. That's a daylily that I've got to move at some point because I'm really going to keep this sort of cleared out around the house and then have the garden. This is another new section of the garden. At the end, I've got covers on because it did get frighteningly cold, but we've got Swedes, rutabagas down there at the end. I say Swedes because most of the people I watch or learn of gardening from are British, and so I don't generally say rutabaga. And then these are, I put squash out. I thought we'd be fine. That's actually, this in front of me is pumpkins and nasturtiums. Might be able to see through the cover a little bit. So, I don't know if the video is capturing that or not, but the pumpkins and nasturtiums, and they're doing fine with the covers, but it did get down. We did have something that was almost a frost. There's New Zealand spinach and squash, and then this whole thing is planted in nasturtiums, and it's waiting for melons and for muskmelons and watermelons, and they'll grow in amongst the nasturtiums. And then there's going to be corn up here. Remember how we used to laugh at the person who had corn in their front yard. And this little area here is, we've got a couple of eastern cedar, lots and lots of St. John's wort. We missed I'm gonna walk back over here because these are just so pretty. My grandmother loved iris, so I got to keep a few around. These are a little past their prime, but I've just got a few. A blue one, a bronze one. And then I'm going to divide these in the fall and fill them in on the other side of the porch here. And then I'll have, that's the only thing that'll actually be landscaped in the front. This is all coming out here. This is mostly just walnut trees and weeds. So that'll all be cleared out except for the St. John's wort, which is lovely. Then back here around the corner, it's one of my favorite little areas. This is all going to be Scutellaria, latifolia. I don't know. I never know if I say Latin binomials right. It's going to be a medicinal, native medicinal herb. This whole bed from well, where the bed gets wider, all the way back. That's going to be. I've got a person in Bloomington that will buy as much as I can produce, and I also probably will make some tea for myself. So this will be beautiful. I'll have some other native wildflowers in amongst it. Not sure what yet. Thinking about growing maybe some Passiflora lutea back here. This bird bath used to be in the front yard and have geraniums around it when I was a kid. This is just a lovely little area. This fence is going to be replaced soon. It's about to fall apart. And look out at the Almeras across the street. And our little furniture here and our other bird bath. Nice little place to sit. Right now I've got lettuce back here because I had some extra lettuce, and rather than throw them in the compost, I just popped them in back here. And that's Hungarian breadseed poppy. They're doing okay. They're not doing great. They're struggling in this new compost like everything else. And this Swiss chard looks pretty pathetic. So we'll see. I mean, if the corn grows fine, then we know it was some kind of pyralid herbicide in the compost. This is a volunteer flowering dogwood. I wanted a flowering dogwood actually right over there, but it volunteered and grew here. So that's where it lives. Back in there somewhere, and I'm not going to hunt it back in there because, well, maybe I am. See if I can find it. I think there's not too much poison ivy back here, but there's a little holly tree that probably will never do much because it's in the root zone of this maple and this gum tree here. But where did you go? There's a native euonymus back here somewhere. I seem to have lost it for the moment, but it's in here. It's not that. That's, oh no, that's it. This is probably it, because no, that's dwarf burning bush. That's got to go, because that's winged euonymus. That's not the native one, because it's not smooth. The native one is smooth, and I just don't, maybe it expired. Well, okay, well that was kind of a bust. So, just a bunch of winged euonymus. Okay. Well, maybe I'll come back here when it's supposed to be blooming and see if I have any little strawberry-like blooms. But there's a little bit more of the dogwood, and then there's a ton of daffodils in here, a ton of poison ivy. This is a viburnum. I forget which one. Dentatum. It's past blooming, but it is freaking huge. It's pretty tall. Looking good there. It's got lots of babies. And then that's a redbud tree. And it was a volunteer. And then over here is oh, we're leafing out. It's beautiful. This is shining sumac. And there's another little volunteer sumac here. It's just a gorgeous little plant. And there was supposed to be a 9-bark in here, but it didn't survive, and so instead I have a tangle of blackberries. And so that's most of the garden tour. We can actually head back in the backyard and see a couple of things that I didn't mention that I just thought of. And then I know I've made this kind of long, but I can fast forward through it or edit it or something. Probably won't though. And then here's a lovely crop of grass, lawn for as far as the eye can see. I am eventually going to take out all my lawn and grow vegetables and medicinal herbs and whatnot. So I won't have the big grass crop, but this is quite a present. I don't know what they do out here and play lawn bowling or something. And then but I didn't, we didn't look at my tomato bed, and I'm pretty proud of it. This little guy here is my cucumber trellis, and I'll tie strings underneath the roots of the cucumbers and then grow them up the string. So here we probably saw this, but we didn't take a look and actually stop and talk about it. It's got cabbage in it now, and the cabbage really didn't do anything, which is fine. But this will be tomatoes, and there'll be 2 rows. Actually, tomatoes and eggplants. There'll be 2 rows, and they're on these T-posts with a PVC T on top and then metal conduit run through it, so I can tie a string under the tomato and then tie the string to the top and grow them up the string. I think 6 eggplants and 10 tomatoes, what's going to be in here. And then we didn't go look at my absolute favorite thing. It's a nice place to end, actually, because this is probably my favorite thing in my entire garden, is this pagoda dogwood tree. that I got at Shooting Star Nursery, which is now gone in Kentucky, and planted here maybe a decade ago. But it's getting ready to bloom. Pagoda dogwood is maybe my favorite southern Indiana native. It is, I just love the texture of the leaves and look at the flowers, and then this gorgeous trunk, the way that it branches out like that. Usually it has some lower branches, but the trunk that had that passed away in a lightning storm. So that was unfortunate. And this is just a very calm, peaceful place to be right here behind my tomatoes and my greenhouse. Back here in the stone wall. So a little peaceful ending to our long video. So thanks for watching. See you next time.